Hey guys, it's Imperial Silver here today. So today we're going to talk about German coin collecting. This video is going to be pretty similar to my Canadian coin collecting video if you watch that. Just a big deep dive. If you haven't seen that, go watch it. It should be down here somewhere in the suggested, I hope. If not, just check my channel down here. It'll be one of my recentest videos. And where we're going to do this one, obviously Germany has a bigger history than Canada. We're going to go from oldest to newest. This will be a pretty long video probably, so yeah. I will just jump right in. With like maybe some stuff quick about Germany. Germany has a really complex history, and therefore it's very complex coin-wise. A lot of those states for a lot of it, and even after, like even when it unified, it wasn't even fully unified. So yeah, let's go right into it. So for the first one, I don't have a coin. It's the only category I don't really have a coin for, but it'd be like Roman times. And this is a Roman coin. And in the Roman times, there was Germanic tribes, and there was actually a big reason why Rome fell, as they tried to come across the Rhine River. So, the way they would be, they'd kind of probably be somewhat similar to Roman coins, because the Romans were the kind of the economy at the time in Europe and the general area. But most of their stuff was very basic in design. So they might have like roughly the same shape and way of making coins, but much rougher, mostly circles and just kind of lines with very light designs. And they had the odd imitation, so it'd be like a coin like this, but it'd be like a pretty rough job of it, basically. And that was kind of the German coin collecting beginning, I guess, you could start with. Most of those coins tend to be pretty expensive. The German tribes, quite a bit. They're not too bad. You can get them fairly reasonable, I guess. And then the imitations are pretty, depending on what it is, can be really expensive, really cheap. But overall, most of these are going to be like a couple $100 coins, almost a minimum. So keep that in mind for yourselves. But yeah, that'd be pretty much like the start. There was also a Roman mint in Trier. Sorry if I mispronounce anything during this. I will try my best also. Which was a Roman Roman colony, I guess, technically, because they made their cities colonies. Roman city, but it's a city in Germany today, and it was a mint. So Roman coins did come from Germany. I wouldn't usually associate them as German, but you might. It's kind of weird. Yeah. So, but yeah, that'd be kind of the start. And then after Rome fell, we kind of don't really have coins for a bit. So from like about like 500 to like about probably around 900, you're not really gonna find coins. It's just like the Dark Ages, right? Germany wasn't really printing coins. There wasn't really much for state there. Around 800, Charlemagne comes around. He's a famous French leader and forms the Carolinginian Empire. Short story, he makes the Holy Roman Empire, which is a German thing eventually. And after he dies, his empire splits up, and the east part and the west part becomes France, and the east part kind of becomes Germany, in a way. But at the time, it's kind of this disunified states underneath like a ruler, and that's where we start to see our coins start to pop up again. Yeah, and a good way to the Holy Roman Empire isn't exactly like Holy Roman or an empire, and that's like exactly phrased by Voltaire. The Holy Roman Empire is neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. Voltaire himself said that. It really didn't have much connection to any of those, except it was just kind of Charlemagne trying to get more legitimacy and prestige by claiming that. Rome actually still exists in the East, but this isn't a video on Rome. So we're going to move on. At this period, we start to get into like what I would consider your true medieval ages of the time. These aren't all German. These two are Italian from Venice, but they're closest I have. I do have some Hungarian coins. I don't think I'm going to bring them out, though. They're a little more beat up. But you're kind of getting into these kind of hammered coins from the medieval age, and these are very common for this kind of time. You get like some words on the edge, a really basic design. This one just has a cross. This is from Lübeck, and this is called a Witten, I think, if I'm pronouncing that right. So, yeah, this is like pretty basic. You're probably looking at stuff like this. This is from Venice. This is an oboe or under. I can't remember what it actually is. Kind of similar design. This one's a little cupped, but just kind of some words on the edge. And on the hot fancy side, you might get some fancier coins like this. Something more along like this line. This is pretty Byzantine in influence, but you might get the odd coin with like some lightly distinguishable faces. At this point, Germany becomes really a hot pocket of states. Like we're talking, you have some of the bigger states that you might have heard of if you know anything about Germany, like Bavaria, Saxony, Baden. But you also have these really tiny states, and they're just numerous, and they just kind of keep on going. It could be really cool to try and collect all the states in the HRE, but it's almost impossible because there's just so many, and some of them were very tiny, like just a city states. So it's kind of tricky, but it can be really fun. Like, there's all these different designs because they all have different crests, different logos, different way of doing coins lightly. So it can be pretty interesting. But that's what you're looking at for medieval coins in Germany is kind of this, hammered, pretty basic overall. Like these are definitely like rare. I wouldn't expect many of these in Germany, but you get some more like designer kind of ones here and there. They're not like unheard of, but yeah. And then leaving this true medieval period, you kind of start to hit what I would consider the late medieval period, or yeah, I'd usually call this like the late medieval period, or you might be considered to say like early medieval, early modern, but I'd probably lean more to late medieval. And these are kind of like the 15th and 16th century, because that's kind of where like the last one, medieval, were 9 to like kind of like the 14th, and then we're doing like the 15th and 16th. So this is one from Prussia, or not Prussia, but Brandenburg, a state that was going to form Prussia in a number of years. Not super fast, but yeah. So 1541 there. You can see there's a huge design change already. Like this is like, it has some similarities between these two. Like the words on the edge, it's still really thin. They don't really have much weight yet. This is a bit bigger though. This is quite a bit fancier. And then coming from like the really late end of that, you have like this coin here from Salzburg, which is a bishopric kind of close to where modern day Austria would be. And this one's from 1681, so this is right at the end of what I would kind of consider this like kind of later medieval going into modern. They kind of have like there's a little bit of a different look. They're usually thin, most of them. They're not super fancy in design, but they also aren't like really kicking it crazy. Like these are really nice. I'm not gonna say they're not nice designs. They're not really picking up that well. I'll bring this close because it is pretty cool actually. You guys can see that. Yeah. And this era is kind of pretty typical of this. You're also dealing with like a ton of different monetary methods throughout this whole time. Dealing with like guldons, ducates, and thalers. Fun fact: thalers, which is is what we derive the word dollar from. That's why it kind of sounds similar. They don't use it there anymore in Germany for. Well, they might still use it for dollar, but it's not what they use for their coinage. But it's interesting nonetheless. But yeah, just basically what you're looking for in this era. Kind of the medieval era in general tends to be a little bit more expensive. You're not really looking at too many cheap coins. You can get a couple of cheap bronzes, but it's really before 1700. It is pretty. They get a little tricky to find. I find, with compared to the other German coins, it's just a little bit. You have to really keep your eyes open or be really looking for them. But they do have really cool designs, and there's a lot of cool history happening at the time, right? Like, a lot of religious stuff is happening at this time in Germany, so it'd be pretty interesting to see like how like the religion affected the coins, because Protestantism was booming, starting to come up, and that really started in Germany there in 30 Years' War and all that. So the next era we're kind of jumping into is kind of like 1700 and onward. This is kind of a gray area. I'd probably say 1700 is kind of like a weird, more middle of these two. It's kind of like a little bit of a middle, and then 1800 to 1900 is kind of its own category. So I'm going to show the 1700 a little bit first. So, oh, this is really hard to grab. Sorry, these coins are pretty thin. So here we have like a shilling from Hamburg, and this is from 1727. And this is pretty similar to like the medieval style coins, right? It's a little bit fancier, I would say. Like it has a little bit of a different feel to it in design, but it's starting to get there. Same with this one. This is starting to look like something else. You can kind of start to see like a little bit more of like this reeded edge. This is from Bremen. This is 1745, I think. I think that's a 5, right? Yeah. They got their key there, and you can actually read Bremen. I kind of see right there. Brem. Well, it's just Brem, but yeah. I don't know what this actually was. A Vorton or something, I think I said? I don't know. There's the backside. But you can kind of tell these are like a little bit fancier. They're not really modern coins, but these definitely aren't like medieval in design at all. And then we have a really big one here from Nuremberg. That's like Nuremberg City there. And we flip it over, and we have the emperor at the time. I don't remember. Joseph II, I think that's what that is. I think that's who this is. I'm not 100%. Don't quote me on that. I don't have this one with the info on this coin. Sorry about that, but I'm pretty sure it's Joseph II. And there he is. And this is a big, thick coin. It's actually got a really neat edge. If I can get it to focus, kind of. It's like kind of different. That's what I mean. You kind of start to see coins like I would classify this as like pretty modern-esque. And then these are definitely not medieval, and they're kind of starting to come towards that like maybe medieval. This area I would start as like the 1700s is where it kind of starts to be able to collect German coins pretty readily if you keep your eyes open. There's a lot of coins from this time. They can range pretty widely in prices. They can be pretty cheap and they can be pretty expensive. So, yeah. On to the next time era. This is kind of similar. This is kind of more like the later end of it. It's kind of more like just the earlier 1800 period here. And I have a couple examples here. I have two thalers that you've seen, but they're pretty cool. So these are both from 1848, and this is from Prussia, and this is from Saxony. These are two of the bigger states, obviously. Let's just focus on one. You know, the design. This is like a very modern coin. There's nothing really differentiating this from like a modern, like a coin from 1960. In fact, I would say this is actually the most coins from 1960, to be honest. A lot of design there. Little eagles on the edge, which is a nice little detail that is hard to catch on your first look at the coin. And then the Saxony one's definitely a little bit more worn, but it's got like this classic imperial drapery that you kind of see in this era's coinage. And yeah. And then you also get like small coins still, don't worry. So this one is from a really tiny state. This is from Saxony Albertine. Oh, that's not even focusing. Ooh. Where's the focus? Come on. That's not a good focus. Come on. There you guys go. That's pretty good. You can see this really nice little design here. I quite like this coin. I think it's really, really elegant, and I think it's nice. It's not super showy. And this is one Pepeg. It is from 1871, so this is the very end of what I would consider this era, because the next era pops up at a certain date, more descriptive than the other ones. Man, it's really not focusing. I'm sorry, guys. Wish I could get it. There we go. Actually, focused way better when I brought it to the middle. Let's hold there for a sec so you guys can see, because it is a tiny little coin. Yep. And this is like a pretty modern like coin, I would say. There's nothing really holding this back. Mind you, it's not super ancient yet at this point either. And this era is like pretty hit and miss. When you're getting to like these bigger thalers and stuff, they can get pretty expensive. Some of the bronzes aren't like cheap, but they're not too bad. The smaller the state, the more expensive. That's kind of for Germany's history. If it's a small state, the price will probably be a little higher if it's because it's a rare state. If it's a big state, it's hit and miss. Prussia is kind of an expensive one because people like to collect Prussia. Bavaria can be a little bit more depending on what it is, but they can also be cheap because they made a lot more. So they're kind of hit and miss. It really depends on the mintage, but it can be really fun to collect like as many HRE states as possible. There's endless designs. Like I'm talking, I think there's like at least 100 countries you could probably collect from in this like 900 to 1800 period, because what kind of separates these two batches of coins is Napoleon, basically. You kind of have like pre-Napoleon a little bit and after Napoleon, because Napoleon came in and conquered pretty much all of Europe. And when he came into Germany, Germany still had the HRE, Holy Roman Empire there. And he beat the Austrian Emperor Francis II, my bad, at Austerlitz, famous battle. And after this, Francis II just formally dissolved the empire. It existed for 1,000 years. Basically, it started in 1800 and it ended in 1804, I think. I think it's four. And Napoleon then formed the Confederation of the Rhine, which kind of merged a couple of the states together, and it was kind of a puppet underneath him. And after he got defeated, obviously, it kind of got divided again. So there's a kind of a split here between these two, because obviously this is pre-Napoleon, after Napoleon. So these states are quite different. I've had quite a bit of a different history at this point. But I still kind of lump them in a little bit together, because you do see coins that look very similar on both ends of this time skip still. So, but they kind of tend to have a little bit of a different categories each. Like this is 1700s are really awkward because they're kind of like lightly medieval, but they're also like not medieval at all, and they're kind of like early modern, but they're not really modern. So, but yeah. And then after this period, we come into the German Empire, which is in 1876. The German states united under Prussia. So when I say they united, it's not quite the same sense as they were completely united. Germany still had princes and different states underneath it. Think of it as if like the United States, if Texas and California had their own princes, and the princes kind of controlled the state level. That's kind of how it worked, but they had more authority than that. So what you see is you'll have places with different portraits on the back, which is different. You don't usually see that unless they're like their own kingdom. So this is Wilhelm II, who was the leader for most of the German Empire's time. His father did reign for quite a while, and and his brother reigned for a very short period, I think like not even a full year. So you usually see his face on various coins, but you can collect all the German prince states, and there's around, I think, 40 different princes. There's a good bit less states. I'd probably say around like 20 something, probably like 25-ish. I'm not 100% certain. It's kind of hard to get numbers exactly. And these mintages can range from like in the millions for some of the more popular princes, the bigger states, down to like a couple thousand, maybe even a couple hundred for some of the really small ones. So the prices on these can range from like pretty normal prices to, you're talking like a house mortgage for some of these, because they like have no mintage. And one thing about Germany you always have to remember is this is a country that went for 2 world wars. One of those world wars really destroyed a lot of Germany too. During wars, you're gonna melt down stuff. You're not gonna be thinking about saving quite as much. So the survival rate for German coins, I think, is quite low compared to other countries. And I think that kind of gives them a little bit more value, especially, like just because World War II, really, right? Just really kind of nailed it a lot. But by the way, this is actually my favorite category to collect from. I'm trying to do the German princes/states. You also have little other marks. There's some coppers. I don't have them out right now. There's only so much I want to bring out for a video because I like to put it back in my slips. So this is a 50 Pefik. This is from the beginning. They also had a different eagle at the beginning, which you can see pretty well here. I actually like the older design personally a bit more. I think it's a little bit cooler than the slightly newer one. And they use these on most of their coins. There's a couple of commemoratives that don't have it, such as this one. This one is a commemorative. This commemorates the University of Breslau, I think, for opening. Or no, for being around for 100 years. My bad. Sorry. Um, and this is Wilhelm on here, and I think the dean of, or whatever they call the university leader. So yeah, you get a couple of these. There's not too many with different eagles. It's pretty rare. And they had three different types of fancier coins. You had your Zwei mark, which is a 2 mark. You had your Drei mark, which is a 3 mark, or we'll just use a more normal one. And you had your Pfund mark, which is a 5 mark, and then you have your 1.5, and then you'll be up below that. These are the 1.5 marks. They look pretty similar. Nothing super fancy. Their backs are a bit different. One has a crest and one does not. They're pretty nice coins. All the German silver in the empire is 90%. I'm almost certain about that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. I guess that's something about earlier Germany that I should have said. It does have pretty varying values, so if you want to stack silver, don't really go beyond German Empire, I would say, too much. It's going to be really expensive also, so you can kind of stack German Empire. It's a little expensive, but it's doable. But yeah, I think this is one of the more fun eras because it's not insane to collect different princes and stuff. So you, like right here, like I have 1, 2, 3 princes and a commemorative, and all these coins would probably be, you would struggle, but you could probably get them for under 50. Not all together, but singularly. These two are easily under 50. This is probably under 50. And then this one, just because the metal's a little bit big and this is like a crown size, it's a little harder, but I imagine you still could. But sometimes these go pretty high. You also have, Germany had 3 city-state that kind of special access throughout history. They had a couple of these throughout history from like trade league at the from the medieval times. They kind of held some power still come the German Empire, and that would be Hamburg, Bremen, and Lübeck. And this is from Hamburg, so they were able to mint without a prince. They had like their own jurisdiction area, so these guys don't have to do a prince on their back. They did this their crest instead. They're pretty. The other two are pretty expensive. Hamburg's pretty reasonable for the most part, but Bremen and Lübeck are both on the higher end for sure to collect. But it's cool because they have a different design. It's always nice to do different stuff. They all have this side reading on them. And yeah, this is just one of my favorite ones to collect. Like I said, there's a lot of earlier ones that you can collect. Like I'd say you could probably collect 20 of the princes fairly easy with like under $100 like per coin, pretty regularly. And then after that it's kind of hit and miss, but it can be really good to start if you're trying to get into coin collecting and build up your stuff, because they're hard to find. They don't pop up super often, so you get a good amount of time to save for most of them. You're not going to find these at every store unless maybe you're in Germany or maybe close to Germany. If you're in like the North America or Oceania or somewhere far away from Germany, they don't pop up super often. I like trying to pick them up as much as possible, and I've missed like 2, and I think I have just about 10 of the princes. So, but yeah, they can be really fun. I also love the design, hence why my channel right there has the logo for that. It's really up there for me, this design. It's funny I didn't pick this one, but this one just feels a little bit more neutral, so I wanted that one. So, but yeah, that's the Empire. Now, after World War II, the Empire was dismantled by the Allies because Germany had lost the war. The Kaiser abdicated, Wilhelm there that we just saw, and we go into the Weimar Republic. The Weimar Republic is kind of an oddball coin section for Germany. You do get some really neat stuff, but the thing about the Weimar Republic in the 1920s and kind of early 30s here for Germany is it's really unstable. Not just government-wise, but money-wise. The Great Depression hits Germany incredibly hard at this time and just destroys their economy. And they have a huge economic crash, super high inflation, people pushing wheelbarrows of Reichmarks around. So you get some pretty weird coins kind of kicking around this time. We'll start with the earliest one here. This one is a special one because this is not actually from Germany, but this is from Danzig, which is a German city that was a free city at the time. So it was kind of its own state. It's actually what started World War II, technically, was Danzig. That was like a demand for it, but they made their own coins because they were their own state, and this is a 10 pfennig from the time. So they're kind of a cool little state you can collect from. They're kind of like what I would consider German, a true German state. If you're wondering why I didn't include Switzerland and Austria in this video, I think they have enough history themselves to be counted as their own thing. Same with any other of the countries around them. But Danzig really doesn't exist for super long, so this is pretty much their interwar period. They have some kind of nice coins. They're not super fancy in design, but they're kind of cool because they have small mintages, and yeah, they're kind of a neat look. Then we're talking about actual Germany. We kind of have like two coins here. This is like a oddball copper because they started to push out some weird coppers during this periods because they were trying to fix stuff. This coin was kind of made fun of when it came out, so there are not actually that many of these out there. This is a Reichspfeffig, and there's 4 of them on here, as you can quite predominantly see. But so you can get some pretty like valuable coppers. Like this is like a $5-10 coin, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Like, it's pretty expensive for a copper from like the 30s. Like most coppers aren't going to be that expensive. But there's just some really weird inflation stuff happening at the time that Germany tried a lot of money stuff. So some of the money stuff in this period can be kind of actually worthwhile, even though it's like a basic metal. And the other thing you get is you get these like 3 or 5 Reich marks at the time, like this. And these can be worth like a fair bit because they're fairly collectible. There's a good amount of them. They're usually not a high percentage of silver. Like I think this one's like 65. I could be wrong on that. Might be higher, but it's not 90. And they have a lot of these, and some of these can get really expensive. Like we're talking like these can range from like this one's probably like on the lower end of some of these. Like this is probably like a $60 coin, maybe 100 if I was really lucky. Going all the way up to a couple $1,000s. Just because some of them had really small mintages and some of them are pretty rare. And like I said earlier, we're going into World War II. These coins just don't survive World War II that well because World War II Germany was in ruins after it. People weren't holding coins. So yeah. Yeah, and then they're pretty cool. They have a bunch of designs. This is one's for, I think it's for Hindenburg's 60th or something. I don't exactly remember what this one's for. Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like, this is like a congratulated thing for him for like 60 years reigning or something. Or the Federation of, it's 10 Europe for the Republic. I'm dumb. My bad. I have a medal for the Hindenburg one, so I don't super collect this period. I'm not super familiar with this one, these coins, but they're pretty cool. They're very collectible. But like I said, they're very odd and they're kind of mishmatchy. That's kind of like the theme of this like interwar period. And then we do end up on the Third Reich taking over in the beginning of the 30s there. The Third Reich didn't really. I'm going to try not to use the N word there, because I think YouTube will shut me down a bit harder if I use it. So I'm going to try. If you hear me change my wording here, they didn't really do much with coins too much. They made 2 and 5 marks during this period, varying levels of silver. So this is a 90%. When they go deeper into closer to the war, they drop down, I think, to 65% silver. They don't really do many designs. There's one church design for the Potsdam Church. And then they do one commemorative coin from the period. I looked it up. I think it's a 5 mark. It's worth a fair bit. It's really the only commemorative coin they have during this period. This isn't really a period for coins because Germany was obviously going into war mode at this point, so they weren't really working on arts as much. And yeah, that's kind of the war period. There's not really too much. There's like, I don't really think there's really rare coinage. I think if you get coins from like the very end of the war, they can be a little bit valuable, like 1945 or maybe 1944 for a couple of them. They can be quite valuable because they didn't have long vintages because obviously at that point Germany was quite close to losing the war. That could be kind of interesting. The prices on these are usually fairly cheap if you want to stack like the silver. It's fairly cheap, usually not high premiums. So that's always an option. But then, yeah, they lose the war, which is good, thank goodness. And we get into the afterwar period. I don't have any coins for this, so I'm just going to kind of bring some coins back and kind of show them off in a little bit higher detail if I can for you guys. Some of the cooler ones. And yeah, during this period, obviously, Germany was split in two. They were split into East and West Germany at the time. And they did make silver coins still. They made 5 and 10 marks, commemoratives for the most part. They can be fairly valuable, but they are a little bit more recent, so they don't quite get as high as some of the older ones. But it can still be quite interesting to, see those older commemoratives, and you can see the difference between the two sides, because the west side was obviously democratic and the east side was communist under the Soviet Union's kind of puppet government there. And this continued pretty much on until silver got too expensive, the same with most of the governments in the 60s. And they continue making coins, obviously, but they don't have silver anymore. So if you're interested in like non-silver, you can still collect at this point. Or I guess if you want, you could try and find like the non-circulation coins. In 1990, Germany united into one state that we have today. And they used the mark pretty much until they went to the euro in 2001, 2002, I think. So, yeah, and that's pretty much German quiet collecting. The biggest thing is I could do multiple videos for German coin collecting, because you could do just a Prussian collection. Like Prussia is perfectly able to be collected by itself without other German coins. You could pretty much do it with any state. You could even do it with like this tiny, like Salzburg is a pretty tiny little state. It doesn't make a huge deal in history. You could collect just Salzburg for the most part. Like that's the thing about Germany. It's not even really as much of a country for a good part of it. It's more like a collection of states with similar-ish ideas. And even then, some of these places are completely different. You have like trade cities like Hamburg and Lübeck. You have like bishoprics. You have monarchies. Like Germany really was this place of very different government types. I would probably say, like, if you're doing an HRE collection, Austria would be counted that. I'm not showing Austria because I'll try and do a video on them one day probably. There was other states in the HRE too. Northern Italy was a part of the HRE for a good part of history. Parts of like the lowlands, like Netherlands and Belgium were. That kind of that area around Germany, there was various countries that were part of it. So you could do that too. But yeah, that's kind of Germany. It's like you have unlimited options. If you're looking for a coin and you don't like any of the big countries, I'd really recommend just giving like German coins to look through. Just go before like 1876, because after 1876 you're kind of limited to like the most distinct you're going to get is like something like this versus this. They're going to be fairly similar in design, at least. You could collect still, but if you want like that if you just want like a weird design or something, some of the states in the Holy Roman Empire do some really weird ones. Like I think Brunswick, is it Brunswick? I think it's Brunswick. They do like a kind of a naked man, or wild man. I think it's what it's supposed to be called. Hanover does like a horse. Like they all have like these different animals, and there's just so many types of coins to collect that there really is like sky's the limit with them. They tend to be fairly reasonable, a lot of these too. Like they're not insane. Some of them are a bit more, like I said, than the others because the mintages are low, but you can usually find like a good amount at like a reasonable-ish price. And yeah, that's kind of German coin collecting. If you've watched the video to the end here, give me a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. It helps the channel grow. And toss down below what your favorite German country is, and what your favorite era was. Was it the really early like kind of Germanic tribe era, maybe like the like the medieval era? Are we talking like the late medieval era? You know, are we talking like more like a little bit later, like early modern? Are we talking like, you know, the German Empire? Are we talking like maybe interwar? You know, or maybe you just like to collect the Third Reich's coins? You know, I'd be a little suspicious of you, but you know, they're cheap. I get it. So yeah, just tell me in the comments what you like down below and what you think. And yeah, until next time, guys, keep collecting.